The last time on Pete and his bus. Hello and welcome to another episode of Pete and his bus. This time around I am in an extremely good mood because it looks like the world is slowly turning back to normal. And with that happening, it means I can do this. poke my head out of the sunroof of my bus, I realize it's nearly time to party. What an amazing event. It was all put together at the last minute, but it ran like clockwork, and we've got to thank the ladies that were involved in organising it, and that's Tiffany and Seeley from the Bubble Agency. They were directly involved with the client, and the feedback we've had so far has been really, really positive, and we loved it. Well done, ladies. It was superb. The other thing we also had, we had some really cool drinks on the bus, which the client insisted upon. And you should like good drinks. Don't have cheap and nasty drinks. We had good drinks, and they were really, really nice. And I've got to mention them, and I'm going to put their link in the description. The first one's Alistair at Park Lane Champagne. Amazing products. Nick at Fox Denton Gin. They do some superb stuff. You've got to check them out. And the last one is Mike, who helped us out from Rebellion Brewery, and they did this really nice IPA and a lager on draft for us. So all these products were really excellent, which made us look good, which made the client happy, so it's a win-win all round. And I am going to stick my head out and say the events industry is back. Probably eat my words in a minute when the world gets struck with COVID-20 or something like that, but for now, it is back, baby. Yeah. Speaking of people that we've been working with, last week a really cool guy called Jay got in touch, and he said, I've got some stuff which could really help you out. And this is it. So I got an email from a man called Jay who was very nice, and he said to me, I work for a company called RTS. That's Rivnut Technology Systems. And he goes on to say that he's been watching my videos right from the beginning, and he really likes what I'm doing, and he reckons that his company can help me out. Now it turns out that they can, because they supply rivets, rivnuts, metal fixings of all sorts in all different shapes and sizes, bracketry, tooling, tools, all sorts. And basically he said, I'm going to send you some rivets, you can use them on your bus, and you can tell all the people how great they are. Well, we're going to do that in a second. But he also said, we also supply something called a rivet gun. Now, when you're a child in a man's body like me, when you hear the word gun, you go, yeah. From the makers of the Driller comes a new epic adventure. Imagine getting attached to something forever. The Riveter. I recommend that you do not go and see that. That looks terrible. Anyway. What am I going to use my amazing rivet gun for? Well, on the front of a Routemaster bus, next to the bonnet, on the front wing, there are aluminium strips. And they were put on there because you're supposed to sort of climb onto that wing and gain access to the engine for cleaning, and maybe the flaps above for the heater controls, all that sort of thing. So these strips were put on there to protect the body. Now, originally, these strips were just plain aluminium to protect the paintwork underneath. But because the bus has got overhauled so regularly, at some stage they just decided to paint the strips rather than remove them, paint and put them back. So on a lot of buses, those strips are actually painted red. And as you see on 2355, my first bus, the strips are indeed red. But when I started 273R, I thought, right, that's a small detail I'd like to get correct. So I took all the strips off and I kind of cleaned them up because they'd also been painted. And then once I've painted the body, I'll put them back. And of course, they are attached with rivets. So I'm gonna finish cleaning up the strips, and then we're gonna rivet them on there with my new gun and see how it looks. The strips you see before you are the ones that actually came off 2730. Now, they were completely red when I took them off, but I've taken the majority of the paint off them already. But the hard bit actually comes now. I've got to scrape out all the leftover bits of paint out of the little channels, and then I've got to buff them up so they look nice and shiny. Here we go. So I'm down to my last strip. Of course, as per usual, it took a lot longer than I thought. It's turned out to be a scrubbing, scraping, rubbing, and scratching exercise. But I'm nearly done. This was the second to last one I've just finished, and they are coming up really, really beautifully. Again, with these buses, the bits they use are of such high quality. 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, you polish this stuff up and it comes up looking like new. I like it! So before I place my brand new polished strips onto the bus, I'm actually going to polish the bit of red before I stick them on, because it'll be so much more difficult to polish around all that stuff once it's done. So we're going to have a nice piece of shiny red. So let's try the first rivet. Here goes the first rivet, powered. Sure, line my strip up. Rivet in position. Are we ready, people? Oh! So that is one of the most satisfying things in the world. You've still got to be really careful though with all the fresh paint around. But what I used to have a lot with the old riveter, the old accordion job, is that when the rivet popped, there was like a recoil, and sometimes you would bash something and scratch something. Whereas with this, of course, there is none, and it is so easy. So here we go with the rest. So what do I think of this gun? I think it is excellent, and my favorite bit is this. When you're done, you just unscrew, and all the spills are there straight to go into the bin, rather than picking them off the floor, forgetting some, and then getting a puncture. Love it. Oh yeah! It's just so easy! You've got to open the bonnet. Last one, here we go. And that was what they call riveting. One tiny corner of my bus done. I'd like to thank RTS for supplying me with these amazingly strong and beautifully working rivets, and also supplying me with this fantastic rivet gun that made this job so unbelievably easy. And after I polished it, I went for a walk. I looked back at the barn and I must have polished it quite well because it is glistening in the distance. Lovely. So there is another event which took place in the last few weeks with my first bus, and this one meant I had to drive straight into central London. The event takes place right next to Tower Bridge, so when I say central London, I mean central London. I've done this event a few times before, I've got a great relationship with the organisers, and because I've done it before, I've got an exact route that I've figured out, which is the easiest, avoiding the Blackwall Tunnel because I can't get through it with the height, making sure that I have a petrol station en route which fits me because the bus obviously is so tall, and also avoiding the biggest part of all the traffic. Now, when I set off, I suddenly remembered that there was some sort of a fuel strike or crisis or shortage of. Now, I'm not going to go into the details why there was no fuel because it's very boring, but when I got to my normal fuel station, the one en route that fits, there was no diesel. I had to drive on, so I joined the A21, which is one of the routes that goes directly up towards the M25, which is the ring road around London. As I was driving along, I'm sitting there thinking, there's not going to be a petrol station that fits me all the way up to when I get closer to the location. And you can imagine the bus uses quite a bit of diesel. And also, on the way home from the last event, I did a big stint without getting fuel. So I knew that the tank was less than half full. Of course, buses don't come with fuel gauges. You've got to remember that. They don't have a fuel gauge. You know, you stick a stick in and you have a look and you go, oh, that's how much fuel was left. Anyway, so I'm coming towards the M25 and I can either go that way around or I can go that way around. The way I had to go has no fuel stations for a long distance. The other way did. So I was forced to turn the wrong way onto the M25. Clackett Lane services, they had diesel at an extortionate price, but I'd rather pay the money than be stranded on the side of the road. So I got my diesel, then I turned on my sat-nav and I found out there had been an accident near Dartford Crossing, which is the way I had to go, and it meant that a quarter of the M25, that's a lot of road, was completely stationary with traffic. So I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. So I was forced to drive directly into London, as the crow flies, via the A22. Now, anybody that lives around London knows that you do not drive a motor vehicle on the B roads into London because it is a nightmare. But I had no choice. So my bus and I went on a little, actually no, it's not little at all, a very large adventure. There were a few interesting things that happened. One, I got stuck in front of a low bridge, and I have to thank the stranger, which I accosted on the side of the road, to help me reverse onto a busy roundabout to turn around and go the other way. But the other thing that happened is the journey took over 4 hours. Now, this journey normally, with the route that I do, it takes between an hour and an hour and a half, tops. If you drive a bus like mine for a very long time, there are a couple of things that happen. I get very sore shoulders because of the position that I drive in. You also get quite a sore bottom from the seat because it ain't all that comfortable anymore. And I generally just get really, really tired driving such a massive thing, especially for 4 hours straight. But the silver lining of all of this was is the amount of love and waves and people trying to high-five me as I drove my old bus through the outer boroughs of London. There's a lot of vintage buses that operate around central London, but in the outskirts, people just don't get to see them anymore, and they've all had a relationship with these buses at some stage in their life. So the silver lining was there was masses of love for the bus going through the boroughs, and eventually I did get to my location. But the one really nice thing about this trip is that I do get to do something quite special, and this is it. So I'm in London, stuck in traffic, obviously, but the cool thing about this is I have a chance to drive my own icon across another icon. Here we go. But it took me 4 hours, and normally this journey takes me about 45 minutes to an hour 15 tops. Just one of them days. But the bus is here, it's in one piece, and now all I've got to do, I'm going to park it up behind me. They're going to use it for a weekend, and I'll come and collect it on Sunday. It can be quite stressful delivering this bus to various event locations around the country. It's got to be presentable, it's got to get there on time, and of course it's got to get there in one piece. And we were faced with a lot of problems this time, but the bus went through motorways, A roads, B roads, and got in traffic, and she never missed a beat. So double points go to RML 2355. You rock! I've received lots of emails, messages, and people who've even written to me inviting me to come to lots of bus rallies and bus events of all descriptions. In an ideal world, I would hop into my bus, drive down there, meet you all, and have a great time. But of course, it doesn't work like that. My bus is tied to commercial events throughout the summer, and of course, these bus events all happen throughout the summer as well. But there is one that is local, and that's the East Grinstead Vintage Bus Running Day, and actually, that's kind of where the whole thing about my YouTube channel started. So this time around, seeing that the sun was out, I thought I'd go and have a look and see what beautiful vintage buses were on offer. This little single decker is so lovely. So that was East Grinstead Vintage Bus Running Day. A really cool day out. It's actually a little bit special to me because if you look at my very first video on YouTube, it was filmed at that event but a few years ago, and it's kind of where I came up with the concept for the whole buses on YouTube thing. So really great event and I really enjoyed it. The other thing is I have to apologize, I didn't make that much progress on 2730 this time around, but as you can tell I'm quite busy with events and all sorts, but next video will have lots of progress, so keep your eyes peeled out for that one. And lastly, I'd like to thank all the drink suppliers and the events organizers, and of course Jay at RTS for supplying me with their amazing goods. And all their links and information about these companies, they're all in the description of this video, so make sure you check it out. And apart from that, I hope to see you next time on Pete and his Bus.